All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Tellor Tech Call, June 16th, 2020. Today should be a good one. Going to go over just kind of Tellor security, maybe like 201. I don't know. Definitely 101 and then some. First, just some quick announcements. So the upgrades for the miner, if you are a miner, you should know this. I've emailed some of the big miners already, posted it on just about every channel, and I will continue to do so because I don't want anybody getting slashed. June 26th at 00 UTC time, we'll be upgrading the miner. Some of the values are going to change. We're doing this to support some new PSR values, which some potential users have requested. So yeah, it should be some exciting stuff. Other stuff, if you guys didn't know, we do have a bounties program. I know I haven't mentioned it on the call in a while. It's still active and running and people are going after it. So if you're a developer, you like making content, go look at our bounties program. I'll link it in the video call, and then you can just ask them. Discord or Telegram channel too. We'll point us there. Lots of, whether you're just a front-end developer, a Solidity developer, or you have, or if you just like creating content, writing articles, there's plenty to do there. The big thing that we want, so we're making a really big push to get users. We want users kind of for, we're going to be kicking off our V2 here in a few months, and we want people reading values from it. And so we're willing to give you guys some money if you just go and hack on it and give us some feedback. We want to make it as easy for users as possible. And so far, the best way we've found out is just you guys building on us, and it makes it so much easier. Just the feedback, what we can change in our documentation, what we can change in our using Tellor package and so forth. So yeah, give us some feedback and go build on us, and we'll give you a little bit of a bounty if you do so. Just reach out to us beforehand. We're also taking part in the Chain Runner Hackathon, which is a month-long hackathon. It's going on right now. If you want to go build on Tellor, you can go get involved in that still. We got $2,000 worth of, I don't know if it's DAI or TRB, but it's up for a bounty. So you can go win that. I know we got a few people building on us already, so it's exciting. And then I also think next Friday I'll be giving a speech. So I think I'm going to be talking about cryptocurrencies and developing economy. So it's going to be much more of an economics talk, but we'll pass out the link whenever time gets a little bit closer. So yeah, I think that's about it for the updates. I'm also working on an article. We should be, if it's not out by the end of this week, you guys just yell at us on Telegram to push it and make sure that we get it out. But I wrote an article on settlement prices. So just kind of like a DeFi article to help kind of educate the space and just best practices that traditional finance already knows. But for some reason, people building on Ethereum don't know. So yeah. Now, on to Tellor security. So most protocols on top of Ethereum or on top of Bitcoin or just layer one in general, you can usually come up with a number, like a sum of money that is the cost to break. And I'm going to get into that number with Tellor. But there's a few things that you want to know, because you need to know. So I'm going to write up here and I'll just erase it. So you have the cost to break, which is really important because you want to know, hey, if you have, $200,000, you can blow apart their protocol. That's helpful to know. But you also have to know kind of the reward. So reward from breaking it. And this is important because this is hard to calculate, because whenever you get into the cost to break, you can really think about, let's say you come up with a number that it costs $100,000 to break Tellor, corresponding to this app. The question is how much money can you actually make off of it? And that's always a really hard part to come up with, because sometimes it's an easy answer, like, hey, I have $100,000 in this derivatives contract, and if Tellor throws, I win a whole bunch of money, or I win that $100,000. So it makes sense to throw it. But other times the reward could be like, I don't know, Chainlink or Band Protocol. They feel really threatened by us. They think we're taking all of their users, and it's actually in their best interest to break us. How much would they be willing to pay? I don't know. It's not quite one of those finite numbers. So it's really hard to put a number on what the exact piece is, and you really haven't seen protocols attacking other protocols. But that, I think you might see it in the future. And before I get into the cost to break Tellor, I want to get into just some misconceptions about blockchain security in general. So, whenever I originally got into the space, whatever, feels like a decade ago, it was really, you thought Bitcoin security came from, okay, we're using, a continent's worth of electricity to mine this cryptocurrency. And in order to break Bitcoin, you basically need billions of dollars worth of computational resources to throw at Bitcoin in order to break it. And that's how I thought it worked. But it's actually pretty far from it. It is not all that expensive to break even Bitcoin. So where did my little, yeah, so the cost to break Bitcoin is what you guys know as a 51% attack. So you have valid blocks on Bitcoin, and then what somebody's going to do is he's going to say, oh, here's a new block, and let's say he mints himself 10 million Bitcoin, goes way above, and then he continues. So let's say he takes over the hash power of the network, and that's the case. The current cost to 51% attack Bitcoin is, pull up the website. You guys can go to the website as well. It's crypto51.app. The current 1 hour attack cost for Bitcoin is $425,000. So that would mean at 10-minute blocks, it would be 6 of these blocks. The cost to make 6 of these blocks would cost you $500,000, which is not all that much. $500,000 is way lower than one would think for a multi-billion-dollar system. But the reason is that as soon as this guy stops doing it, the honest miners are going to be over here building their own blocks. They're not going to be building on this chain because they know it violates a principle in their code. So as soon as this happens, that you break it, or as soon as you stop attacking the network, it's just going to revert. And this is where the idea of finality comes in, because it's really hard. You can never break Bitcoin forever unless you're willing to just continuously spend this money. The idea is that by doing this, you can make money somehow. And that's really where the reward piece comes in. The reason that you would want to break it for, say, an hour is if you know Coinbase, for instance, they require you to wait 6 confirmations on Bitcoin. So what you would do is you would print yourself 10 million Bitcoin, deposit it on some exchange, and then just withdraw some other coin. So say a privacy coin, for instance, a Monero or Zcash. And Coinbase would let you do that after there were 6 confirmations, because they would assume that then it's finalized. I think Coinbase actually wouldn't let you do that if you just if you're trying to do that large of an amount. They might make you wait longer, so it doesn't make sense for you to do it. But that's kind of the issue. So you would really, it's whenever you start thinking about the cost to break, you have to think about it in terms of a time. So the cost to break for an hour or the cost to break for a day. And that's really where some differences come in. And Tellor works in a similar way. It's not just like, hey, I broke it, so now now everything blows up, and I'm going to get into that. And by the way, Ethereum, cost to break Ethereum at the moment, just so you guys have some references, cost to break Ethereum for an hour is $138,000. Yeah. The cost to break Bitcoin SV is $7,000. Cost to break Dash is $2,000. So these are not really big numbers, but it's just the idea that you can always go back. So we're going to revert. And as long as you don't have finality, it's fine. So the truth is what we say the truth is. And I think that's honestly what gives it security. So you know that kind of the collective, what the community agrees on, you know the community is not going to continue to accept this, so it's safe. You just have to make sure that you, if you're an app using Bitcoin, like, you know, in this case, Coinbase would be considered an app that uses Bitcoin, they have to make sure that they're not relying on something that's really fast. If they would rely on one block confirmations and instant withdrawals and things like that, you'd have an issue, because now it would drop down to where it's, you know, $50,000 to break Bitcoin for a block. People would be doing that all day long, because it would just, you'd have to break it for 15 minutes and then you could run away with a bunch of Monero or something like that. So that's just what you have to get into your heads. It's that this idea that you want things to be slower. You know, I know we always harp on it a long time, because that's the way that Tellor built our system, is whenever it's, you know, whenever something isn't final, you just want to wait longer. The longer you wait, the more secure it is. So, okay, now I'm going to get into the cost to break Tellor. Okay. Just somebody yell at me if you can't see this. No. Cost to break Tellor. So it's going to be the cost to break one Tellor block. So the way that Tellor works is we take a median of 5 miner submissions as the official value. So that would be, you'd have to break the proof of work. So the cost to do proof of work times 3. And then you're going to get disputed if you put in a wrong value. So plus it would be 3 times 1,000 tokens. So the cost to break Tellor, what that comes out to, if you want to know, like, how much electricity are people using to mine Tellor? What's the cost to do proof of work? It is very, very minimal. Similar to, like I was showing you, those the crypto51.app pieces. Electricity is not all that pricey for some of these things. You can just think about it in terms of what you're actually making. So, you know, every 10 minutes, one reward, it's going to be, you know, what is it? I think it's like you get a little under 4 TRB. So say you get like 15 TRB, which comes up to like $50. So you're making like $50 on each one. So you're likely not going to be putting in the resources greater than $50. Just wouldn't be profitable for you then. So, I mean, this thing's going to be very minimal. Like the cost to get all of the hardware and everything, you know, you're looking at this is going to be like, what, $150 or something like that. You know, to make sure that you want to be certain that you're actually going to get it if you're attacking it, though. So, you know, for simplicity's sakes, you could round this all the way up to $1,000. And then this would be, we have 1,000 times our token price of, we'll round down to $5, plus 15,000. You can tell that the vast majority of our security comes from that staking piece. And this is because it's an irrecoverable cost. This is actually why ASICs actually help make a system more secure. So a lot of people think that, oh, if you have GPUs, then more people can mine and it's gonna, help make your system more secure. But it's actually false. So this idea that we have staking, that's actually similar to like an ASICs cost. So if you had to go buy a bunch of ASICs for Bitcoin, if you break Bitcoin, those things are gone forever. I guess now there's some other coins that use the SHA-256 algorithm, but with most of these ASICs, they're so custom built that they're basically trash. So you need a gigantic upfront investment, similar to a stake, that you want Tellor to succeed because now you have this big pile of money just sitting there that is useless if you break it. So anyway, so this would be the cost to break for, that's 16,000. That would be the cost to break for one block. So that's 10 minutes now. So per hour, so you would take 16 times 6, which is, I believe, 96,000. Let me check my math. $96,000 per hour to break Tellor. If you actually, so that's pretty cool. $96,000 to break Tellor for an hour. And for V2, so we're moving to 5-minute blocks. We're putting 5 values in each block, which actually doesn't affect this. So 5-minute blocks actually would just double our security. So the proof of work for an hour is going to be exactly the same. But what's actually going to change is that now you're going to lose twice as many stakes. So now it's basically just going to be double this, which would come out to be, what would that be, like 190 per hour V2. So whenever Tellor is V2 with 192, Ethereum, if you remember, ETH at the moment is 138K. So yeah, so if ETH is 138K, in V2, you'd be just as good off going and breaking Ethereum as you would breaking Tellor, which we're actually going to continue talking about because I think there's just as big of a risk of somebody breaking Ethereum to hack your DeFi protocol as there is somebody attacking Tellor. Okay. Now, I do need to kind of talk about V2 a little bit. So with this V2, you can see we just doubled security by moving from 10-minute blocks to 5-minute blocks. The big question you guys should all, of course, ask is like, well, why on earth wouldn't you move to 1-minute blocks? This would make so much sense. You'd have whatever 10x security from there. You'd be more secure than Bitcoin. And maybe at some point we can. I think right now the biggest piece that we're worrying is about gas costs on Ethereum. So for our users, if we're secure up to this amount, they could just go and break Ethereum. And by breaking Ethereum, I mean all they could do is there's a whole bunch of ways you could break Ethereum, but if you're just the one mining every block, you could just like censor all Tellor transactions out of it. So like no value gets pushed, which is basically what you're doing here, is you're not pushing a Tellor value through. You're just, you're not letting the DeFi app get the Tellor value. Now, obviously, so whenever we're above Ethereum's cost to break for an hour, you'd rather just go break Ethereum and mine every Ethereum value. Make sense? So it doesn't make much sense whenever we talk about why don't we make it faster for Tellor V2, the big reasons are gas costs are a big thing. So like if you want to keep the inflation rate of the whole system the same. So, you know, right now, let's say we print, I think we're printing something like 18 tokens every 10 minutes. 10 minutes. If you reduce that to 1 minute blocks, now you're printing only 1.8 tokens per block. You know, divide by 5. Say you're, you know, getting 0.3 tokens for submitting a solution. What's that? That's like $2. If you're only getting $2 to submit a Tellor solution, the big problem there is that we're reducing this, so we're going to reduce this down to 5. So this would be, you know, even under. But if it's only $2, now if gas prices go above $2, it actually doesn't make any sense for you to continue mining. You're not going to submit a solution where you have to pay more in gas than you get, and the users would have to be paying for that. Right now we have especially since we're trying to get new users, it's really nice that we're subsidizing the gas that they have to pay. You know, normally if somebody's requesting data, the user should be paying for that gas. But right now we're basically paying for the gas of all of those miners with inflationary rewards, which we want to keep doing for our users. We like that model for while we're growing. Ethereum gas prices have been really, really crazy as of lately, and hopefully V2 will come. You know, we're not holding our breath, but if gas prices do get really crazy again, you could see a scenario where it's too expensive for Tellor miners to keep operating, and users have to add crazy high tips just to keep the Tellor system churning. Not to mention anything that has to say with how much they're willing to spend on electricity if gas costs are so high. So you definitely want to just balance it there. You want to make sure that you keep scarcity, which is necessary for the whole token economics thing to work. And you also want to make sure that the miners aren't paying astronomical prices in gas. So that's like whenever people talk about like, if you wanted like a real-time oracle that was pushing prices to Ethereum every block on Ethereum or every 15 seconds, you know, there's no reason. Like I would rather push it every 5 minutes with 50 data points just to save block space on Ethereum. You know, people who talk about needing those crazy fast updates, I think what they don't realize is that you can break all of Ethereum for not that much money, just prevent any oracle from submitting a transaction, and you'd have some big issues there. So that's why we don't just quadruple our speed. So yeah, moving on with Tellor security. Cool. All right. Some people said hi in the chat. Hi, Laurie. Hi, Paul. The next piece of security I want to talk about is kind of at the beginning when I was talking about you have a cost to break. Cost to break versus the reward from breaking, and I think people don't always calculate this correctly. So we'll get some pushback from users, or mainly just investors who don't get it. They'll be like, how can you ever secure DAI when DAI has a market cap of $80 million? Or how can you secure, you know, this coin, or just something that has a market cap of this high? And the reason is that, well, it doesn't. I mean, it does, but at the same time, that's not the reward. So like if you break DAI, you can't, if you break the oracle to DAI is actually set up pretty well. So if you break the oracle to DAI, all that happens is the DAI system shuts down. So what's the incentive to break the oracle for DAI? The actual reward that you can make is, what can you make if DAI shuts down? So usually if DAI shuts down, what's the biggest derivative that you could take? And what you have to look at for these are kind of like I was talking about before, competitors. So the biggest person who's going to want to pay a whole lot to shut down DAI, it might just be a competitor stablecoin. So some company who thinks they can, USDC or some other decentralized person. The biggest one though is off-chain derivatives. This would be like a BitMEX. So like if you had a BitMEX 100x contract that was, say, betting DAI US dollar, if you could somehow get a crazy amount of leverage and a crazy amount of open interest to where if DAI broke and the price of DAI went to zero because it went away, they would make a whole lot of money. Now it makes sense to shut down DAI. Because you're not going to, just the way that their contracts are set up, you can't steal the DAI out of there. You would actually need to make the money on the side, and that's why paying attention to what kind of off-chain derivatives are available, that's when you have to be careful in the system. Same goes with like a Bitcoin. Like who's actually incentivized to go and break Bitcoin? 51% attack a Bitcoin for a really long time. A lot of people think it's probably not going to be just some profit-seeking actor because, or at least some on-chain profit-seeking actor, because on-chain, the whole system's just going to revert. You know that. It's going to be somebody who probably makes a massive leveraged bet on CME or on ICE with Bitcoin futures, or on BitMEX if that's where the liquidity is. And if they break Bitcoin that way, then they make the money regardless of whether or not Bitcoin survives. Because if you're just trying to break Bitcoin to steal the Bitcoin, it doesn't work. Because even if you do succeed in stealing it, it's worthless unless you have a way to trade out of it. And that's what you have to pay attention to. So, yeah, so this is kind of why this reward, one of the biggest pieces for Tellor security, kind of like I was talking about how you measure it in a time to break. The best way that we can make Tellor secure is to make all of the protocols using Tellor secure. You don't want to read very fast values. You want to build it similar to Maker, where you can't steal everything, you just shut it down if the oracle breaks. And you have a mechanism for doing that. Those are best practices. I wrote a whole article on it. So whenever you set up the users correctly, then it makes your system more secure because people can't really make any money even if they break you. They can just sort of be dicks to your system, which is different. Okay, so a few more pieces. Now, it's probably gonna be a shorter call, but let's talk about how to break Tellor. I thought this would be fun. We can just, if anybody from protocol is watching, from a competitor is watching, how to break Tellor. We'll just go into it. If I was trying to attack the system, what would I do? First off, you guys should try and bribe the devs. Always wanted to find out what my number is. So, next one. The first way you can actually break Tellor, would be if you just buy 51% of the coins. So, I was talking about cost to break Tellor. It was more like the cost to grief Tellor. If you would actually want to put a bad value on the Tellor chain and have it stay there, even after the dispute process, you would need to hold 51% of the voting power in Tellor. So you could just buy up all the coins. So obviously, of the voting power is different. You know, we want to start doing things to, if you guys saw, we created disputes.tellorscan.com. You can go vote there. We want tools in place to vote in case attacks do happen. And then in V2, we're moving to, you can have multiple rounds of disputes. So what that means is you'd probably need a very significant portion of the Tellor tokens, and then you could break it. We like this security mechanism though, because if you have to buy up a whole bunch of Tellor tokens to break Tellor, then all those Tellor tokens are worthless. So you're just losing all that money. So, you know, right now we have like a $7 million market cap or something like that. So you have to spend like $3.5 million. Not to mention you probably push up the price a whole lot if you tried to buy that much. The next piece would be, you could just break the mining. So this was griefing Tellor for a long period of time. You could, just grief it and continuously have 51% of the mining, and that would be a pain. I think another, so this was another attack vector. That's probably not as obvious. So we'll talk about a few more non-obvious ones. So another way that you could break Tellor mining, besides, you know, that cost to break where you're just losing 3,000 tokens every 5-10 minutes, would be just to be mean to us. You could go buy a whole bunch of hash power, and then you could just point a whole bunch of hash power at Tellor and scale it up. So you would basically 10x the difficulty or 100x the difficulty if you could. What this would do is it would make you guys would probably be the only miner, but you're being honest. So you're continuing to do good things for Tellor. And then you could maybe, like, if we had, let's say, some derivatives contract that needed a price update relatively quickly, then what you could do is you could just drop off the face of the planet. You could just stop mining Tellor, and then other people would have to come in and fill the void. And if you were the only miner in place, or the only miner that was gigantic, theoretically it could take some time before they found a solution. So this would be like, now we'd have to go scramble and find other GPU miners to spin up their miners. We've thought about that one, and luckily we have enough pools now that sort of know how to mine Tellor that we could kind of call them up. It would sort of be tough, it would probably freeze the system for a few hours if somebody did that. And it would be insanely costly to do because you'd have to have access to all that hardware. That's one way. So you could just scale up mining and then drop off. Like I said, it's not like getting a bad value in Tellor. It's just sort of pausing the system for a little bit. The other way, so you could grief Tellor. So you could just request awful IDs the whole time. This one would, so this is actually similar to like Ethereum. So you could grief us or Ethereum in that case, if you just pushed up the gas prices. So you could just like push up the gas price for Tellor, the tips, and make it so users had to pay a lot. It's not that you're like preventing users from doing it, you're just making it really expensive for users, which would be like kind of just being mean to Tellor users, which might be a good way to be mean to Tellor. The other, you could also just grief Ethereum. If, you wanted to stop Tellor mining, kind of like I was saying before, if gas prices get too high, miners aren't going to want to submit, and Tellor tribute holders are going to have to submit extra tips in order to cover the gas costs. You could just push gas prices up on Ethereum, and it's not that expensive to do. So you could push gas prices to like, if you're willing to spend, like $200,000, like the cost to break Ethereum for an hour, rather than just break Ethereum mining for an hour, you could probably push gas prices above 100 for a day. If gas prices are above 100, probably most of our miners they might not want to submit. And that's not something we can control on Ethereum. So whenever gas prices are that high on Ethereum, if somebody was willing to spend $200,000 to $500,000 to just push gas prices up on Ethereum, it would just cause hell all across the board on Ethereum, not just for Tellor, but for everyone. And it's not that there's nothing you can do. What you can do is make sure that you build a solution that plans for this. If you need price updates every minute, you're going to be paying a whole lot in those times. But if you're building, say, a week-long derivative contract and you're fine waiting it out, then you don't suffer. You can say thank you to the attacker. He's paying your miners a little bit more to do this. Everybody sort of wins. It's sort of annoying. You have to wait for your derivatives contract to settle for a day, but it's not the end of the world. And that's how you want to build the protocols on these networks. You want to build so they can sustain these longer attacks. If your protocol breaks, if a transaction doesn't get sent every hour, you're just asking for somebody to grief all of Ethereum and your whole protocol screwed. So build things slow, long story short. The other thing, I think it would be, how would we respond to some of these attacks too? So as you guys know, like, how can we make it better? I think this is like a good way to kind of bring it full circle. And so we do still hold an admin key where we can change the system if necessary. I think in the case of, like, if the difficulty got too high and nobody could mine it, like, we could change the difficulty pretty quickly. We're planning on throwing away the admin key either whenever a user tells us to, or we'll probably throw it away after V2, just to kind of kick things off on the full decentralized piece, user or none. So that'll be fun. Make sure V2 works as planned, and then throw it away. But in the meantime, I mean, that's why, like, you really wouldn't want to try and attack us now, because we're pretty centralized. And I think that's, there's something to say with a lot of these Oracle protocols, or just any protocol in general on Ethereum. A lot of the times the teams are still supporting them. So if you're attacking Tellor to materially affect the price of Tellor, so like the TRB token, it might not be the best solution, because we could fork Tellor relatively easily. So I always tell people, like, if Brenda, Mike, and I decided to just if somebody was, let's say somebody bought up all of the TRB tokens and decided to just vote down everything we did, and they wanted to be really mean to us, we could just easily spin up a new Tellor contract with a new token and start from scratch. And we don't really have much users that are loyal to the TRB contract. We would just set them up on the new contract. Right now, all the sales is coming through us, all of the marketing is coming through us. So that one would probably just sort of fade. That's why whenever you see hard forks in the token world, it's not really controversial. You don't really go against the team, because most of the value is still being added by the team. And so you see things like, you have a Ethereum size or like a Bitcoin size where, maybe if the core devs want to do something, they get pushback. Most of the time you just have to go with them, though, because that's where the value in the protocol is being added. Anyway, I forget why I was saying that, but yeah. So if you attack us now, we still have kind of like admin key rights. And even if we didn't have admin key rights, we still have like I like to call them like forking rights. The network isn't quite sustainable on its own yet. You know, even when you look at really large systems like a MakerDAO, I find it hard. I think Maker might be close to the point where, like, if the Maker team all died, Maker might continue. I think that's like a good litmus test. Like, if the whole team dies, what's the chances that this project would continue? Maybe I think probably single collateral DAI would. People seem to like that one. We probably all just be done with multi-collateral DAI. But yeah, there's not many protocols, like basically Ethereum and Bitcoin and maybe like a Monero. I don't know. Anyway, so how can we make Tellor better? The big ways, so obviously since we're this one, high market cap makes it more secure, pretty easy. Higher price leads directly into it. So, you know, obviously you don't want to do pumping and shilling. We're not into that. But just making holding does help with security. So you guys can pat yourselves on the back. Good job. Another thing, voting. So we want the high voting percentage. Whenever disputes happen, that's why we created an app, tried to make it easy to use. I like to think that we have a really good community. So, you know, we don't have too many token holders, and we have a pretty active Telegram and Discord group. And I feel like, you know, the more your community is actually engaged and paying attention, the better. So if you can like send out a Telegram message and a Discord message and an email to your subscribers, and you can reach 90% of your token holders, and they actually read your message and go vote on something, that would be hugely powerful. And the better we can do that, you know, the more sort of things we can do to engage users and make sure that they would come and vote. That means more to security than anything. Making sure that they kind of share the vision of what you would do in certain circumstances. So, and lastly, how we can make it better. I think just education in general. Teller security, it's what users do with it is going to really make it secure or insecure. If, for instance, you have a bunch of people who decide they want to go create a derivatives contract that settles to the Teller value 1 second after it's published, people are going to try and attack Teller because they're just going to say, hey, you know, we want the price really fast. We still want to use Teller. Now there's a big incentive to break Teller. So, you know, if you have a 500,000 DAI that's somebody can take, if the price of Bitcoin that Teller reports goes up by 10, people are going to try and break Teller. So we have to make sure that they don't build those things. They might build those things on Teller, and part of it is like, hey, it's, you know, you're free to do whatever you want, and it probably won't be secure, but the best we can do, we want to make sure that people are using these things properly. You know, if you're using the price that was reported to Teller, you know, we're starting to push out with the miner upgrade, TWAPs, so you can do a 24-hour average Bitcoin price. And you can take that price and it makes a little bit more sense. And you can maybe take that price and then give it an hour or a day to wait for disputes. Those are some things that would really, really beef up your security. Because now, like we were saying, now you'd have to pay $200,000 to break Teller for an hour. So it's going to be a whole lot harder. So those are some of the things that we can do to make Teller more secure. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit today. And yeah, we're looking at different ways that we can continue to make it more secure. You know, we want it to be a really secure protocol that people can use. But unfortunately, it is one of those things that, just like kind of blockchain security in general, it's not quite obvious what the security model is. So hopefully we can clear it up. At some point, maybe I think I have a Medium article I wrote about this like a year ago, but we can maybe write a new one. So thanks for listening, everyone. And catch you next week for an AMA. See you.